We've never had the military admit to us that it is short 40,000 troops and they don't know where to get them at a time when the American population has never been larger. We have never had no border at all. It ceased to exist. We've had 10 million people walk across without audit. We've never seen anything like it. And we are borrowing 1 trillion every 100 days. It's completely unsustainable. We've never had a period in American history where our elites say that crime is not crime. We are regressing into tribalism. So when you look at all of these challenges and you look at the symptoms, they don't think that anybody would ever dream of extinguishing them.
Throughout history, civilizations rise and fall, but some civilizations end by annihilation at the hands of a rival civilization. The annihilations of the ancient Greek city of Thebes by the Macedonians, commanded by Alexander the Great, of Carthage by the Romans, the Christian Byzantine Empire by the Muslim Ottomans, and the Aztecs by the Spanish, were, at least from the point of view of the vanquished, the end of everything. But how do civilizations become so vulnerable to annihilation? This is the question Hansen asks in The End of Everything. Here are Hansen's most important ideas. First, the end of a civilization is often unexpected, even up to the eve of annihilation. Second, civilizations that count on friends defending them will likely be disappointed. Third, internal weakening often precedes civilizational annihilation, in particular, a loss of spirit and social unity. Fourth, modern Western civilization displays some of the signs of a weakened civilization open to destruction, especially loss of self-confidence and even self-contempt. And lastly, even if the decline of any civilization is ultimately inevitable, it is not inevitable that it will happen at any particular time. Civilizations can act to avoid their demise. Take the city of Thebes, which was one of the largest and most important of the Greek city-states during the 4th century BC. Notwithstanding its glory, it was notorious for its merciless cruelty against its enemies. It found itself besieged by the formidable Macedonian army, commanded by possibly the greatest military general in human history, Alexander the Great. Thebes had its own unique Greek culture and government, and this was all wiped away with the Macedonian victory, which resulted in the merciless slaughter of men and the enslavement of women and children. The Thebans were defeated in a single bloody day, erased from history. Another city, Carthage, supposedly founded in 814 BC by the Phoenician queen Dido, bears the tragic status as being the first victim of genocide in recorded secular history. Having said that, Carthage was a civilization whose practices we would not grieve the eradication of even today. Certainly among the Greeks and Romans, Carthage was a symbol of barbarism, with its religion of child sacrifice on the fiery altar of Moloch. Carthage was also a wealthy superpower and a constitutional republic. It was an anti-Rome and a genuine threat to the Romans, even though it lost the First and Second Punic Wars with the Romans. It's no wonder that the ancient Roman senator Cato ended every one of his speeches with the famous words, Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. The Carthaginians merely ensured that their defeat would be merciless and cruel when they grotesquely tortured captured Roman soldiers on the top of their city walls in full view of the Roman army, hoping to scare them. After a 3-year siege, Carthage was obliterated by Rome in 146 BC. Hansen's next case study is the Byzantine civilization or Christian civilization in the Eastern Roman Empire. From the 7th century onwards, it had a perpetual enemy in its backyard, Islam. From AD 330, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire was Constantinople. Today, we call it Istanbul, which remained the most important and well-fortified city of the Byzantine Empire, right up to its capture by the Ottoman Muslims in 1453. In 1453, the Byzantine Empire against the Ottoman army led by Mehmet II fell. Those who did not flee were either slaughtered or placed in perpetual dimitude under the Ottomans. As Hansen says, first, and so often, their supposed friends or allies either joined in the destruction or carefully kept quiet at a safe distance. The second problem that went wrong in the Byzantine Empire on the eve of their destruction was that the defenders were often internally squabbling and too fractious to ever really be able to unite in the face of a common enemy. The Aztecs were the greatest civilization of Mesoamerica. When the Spanish arrived, they were awed at its massive city, Tenochtitlan, and compared it to Venice. And yet their awe soon turned to horror as the religion of the Aztecs, with its gory human sacrifice and cannibalism, was revealed and weaponized against them. The Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernan Cortés, waged a war against the Aztecs from 1519 to 1521. With their Spanish steel, the conquistadors slaughtered Aztecs in the hundreds of thousands, while the Aztecs captured as many Spanish as they could to sacrifice to their gods in a desperate attempt to turn the tide of the war. According to Hansen, there has not been a political annihilation like the Aztecs and then the Incas since. If there was one constant danger that the ancients, particularly the ancient Romans and Greeks, warned of, it was a long, luxurious peace. Peace and prosperity became a luxury crueler than war, according to Juvenal. Peace and prosperity make for soft, inward-looking citizens ripe for invasion. Such peace, said the Roman historian Sallust, is far more injurious than the adversity itself. And yet, too much war is also a problem, as over time it can weaken a civilization, much as it did with the Byzantines. Certainly the West today has enjoyed considerable peace since World War II, and unparalleled prosperity. Arguably, this long peace has led many to think that it's impossible for it ever to be broken, and therefore they see no need to maintain powerful national armies, nationalism, and compulsory military service. They see these as unnecessary at best and evil at worst. But from a long history point of view, this is a perilous way to think. Disunity is a common theme in Hansen's book, and it's a major problem in the West right now. Western Christians, says Hansen, in the end were too disunited and squabbling to save Byzantium civilization. Similarly, other cities found themselves torn between those who wanted to surrender and those who wanted to fight. Hansen's earlier book, The Dying Citizen, How Progressive Elites, Tribalism, and Globalization Are Destroying the Idea of America, outlines the nature and causes of the disunity currently facing the West. America, especially, has been almost constantly at war since the 1950s, and especially so over the last 20-plus years, since 9/11, with some reprieve from 2016 to 2020 under Donald Trump. As Hansen has explained, the hasty retreat from Afghanistan shows a country in decline and without the resolve to project an image of strength in an increasingly dangerous world. What can the West do? Hansen says, but we also see a recurring universally human theme across time and space. The doom at the brink of civilizational destruction, having an attitude partly born of hubris and partly of naivete, perhaps best summed up as, it cannot happen to us. Can the West avoid what Hansen calls the Melian dilemma? That is, the agonizing choice between calculated survival under the rule of another civilization or brave extinction? The ancient Greeks, the Melians, chose to defy the Athenians and suffered annihilation accordingly. We may admire the spirit of the Thebans, the Carthaginians, the Byzantines, and the Aztecs, but they were wiped off the earth for it. A better way forward is not to be in a position to make that choice in the first place. But can we control that? Arguably, yes, Hansen says. He says, usually the fate of the vanquished can be calculated in advance and more mundanely by their numerical or military inferiority, their prior and present naivete, their long decline, their incompetence, or the sheer military genius and resources of their attackers. Strong civilizations, by virtue of their strength, deter would-be aggressors. America must also attract allies who might otherwise gravitate to her enemies. This would be one of the best ways to avoid a war with China. Shrewdly, the Spanish managed to draw away key allies of the Aztecs to themselves. It doesn't always work, as the Carthaginian Hannibal found out in Italy. But creating an alliance is crucial, not so much because the alliance will necessarily help the US win a world or regional war, but because the existence of that alliance in the first place is itself a deterrence to would-be aggressors. What the Spanish lacked in numbers, they more than made up for in cultural, political, and technological advantages. The siege of Tenochtitlan, if we can term it properly a siege, is one of the best examples in history where technological disparity between the attacker and the attacked characterized the entire battle. Indeed, 1,500 Spaniards, with their Mesoamerican allies, managed to destroy an empire of millions in roughly 2 years. In other words, America has an interest in maintaining its immense technological supremacy, which means protecting its intellectual property from Chinese hackers and continuing to attract the brightest people in the world to her shores. These are just some of the possible deterrent measures one might imagine reading Victor Davis Hanson's book. The End of Everything is a highly engaging account of 4 catastrophic conflicts that are now historical memory. Hanson's book is not merely to inform, but to equip the reader with an understanding of what can go wrong in order to think constructively about what needs to be done to ensure that things go right. In this respect, Hanson's book shows that history is still humankind's greatest teacher. The question, as always, is whether we have people of influence willing to sit at her feet and learn. I'm Stephen Chavura for John Anderson Media.